Hi, I've got a bit of a change of scenery this week. I'm currently in a hotel in Paris and I had a bit of free time, so I thought I would film a video now so I don't have to wait until the weekend. Episode 4 was pretty busy. There was a lot of things happening, so I'm just going to get straight into the recap. In this episode we see Alec and Ellie go on a bit of a road trip to Sandbrook, and on the way they talk more about the evidence in the case, and we hear a bit about family of the young girl that was killed. So her parents, Kate and Ricky. Ricky, the dad, being the guy that I mentioned as a possible suspect in the last video. And then my reasoning behind this was that he's played by quite a well-known actor, so I didn't think that he was just going to be like kind of a background character that was shown in one episode. I thought he would be featuring a bit more through the series. We found out that the parents didn't really like Lee very much, and that Pippa used to go around to their house quite a lot, which they didn't really like. And also in terms of evidence, that Lee's hair was found on Pippa's pillow, which looks quite damning evidence really, or it could have been planted there of course. And actually in the last episode, I don't think I mentioned it in the video, but we found out that there was a pendant of Pippa's that was found in Lee's car. Lee had said that he used to drive her to school sometimes, so it probably fell off in the car. But then Alex said that she'd been wearing it the day that she died, so again, doesn't really look very good for Lee. So while they're in Sandbrook, amusingly, Alec and Ellie have to share a bed in a hotel because Ellie's reservation has been lost. So given that they were accused of having an affair in court last week, it's quite funny that they end up having to sleep in the same hotel room together. Alec though sleeps outside the covers, so there's no funny business going on. And while they're in bed together, Ellie questions Alec about whether or not he slept with Claire, because earlier in the episode we had seen that Lee tries to like buddy up with Ellie and is kind of like pays her parking, and tells her that, you know, he sympathises with her about the whole like court thing, and he also then slips in that he thinks that Claire and Alec slept together. So when Ellie questions him on this, Alec just dodges the question, but we see like a little kind of flashback memory of his, of like lying next to Claire in bed. So that kind of implies that they probably did sleep together. So the next day they both visit the Gillespies, the parents of Pippa. Alec goes to visit Kate, the mum, whilst Ellie has a snoop round Lee and Claire's house, and there's parallels to an episode earlier in the series where she goes into her own house. So you see her like open up the door to a pile of mail and walking through police tape, so it's very similar to her walking through her own house. While Alec is visiting Kate, we find out that her and Ricky have split up and that he was having affairs. It claims that he was also sleeping with Claire, or anyone she hasn't slept with. She also let slip that Ricky has no alibi for the night of Pippa's murder, because at the time she had said that the whole family were together at a wedding, but now she was saying that he was having sex with one of the bridesmaids. So, you know, is that true, or is that just a story he's come up with so that he's got an alibi for where he was? So things aren't really looking good for Ricky, and they get worse when he turns up when Alec is out for dinner with his daughter and his ex-wife at Nando's / an anonymous chicken restaurant. And he accuses Alec of harassing Kate and basically tells him to stay away. There's also like a creepy moment where he asks Alec's daughter how old she is and is like, oh, I used to have a daughter your age, but she was murdered, and thanks to your dad, her killer is walking free. Which is just like, don't say that to a child. Coincidentally, both Alec and Ricky seem to have had relationships that fell apart due to the Sandbrook case. You know, Alec and his wife split up. We found out in the first series that she was having an affair with another officer, and it was her that lost the evidence that kind of lost them the whole case with Sandbrook. And then obviously Ricky and Kate have not been able to maintain their relationship after the death of their daughter. So at this point, Ricky is kind of becoming a very clear suspect. So there's the hint that he might have had an affair with Claire. There's more to connect the two of them as well when we find out that the other telephone number that she had in her phone, so if we remember last week, Ellie went snooping through her phone, wrote down 2 telephone numbers, one of them being Alex and one of them being just a random number, and they phone this random number and we see Ricky's phone ringing. So it looks like Claire has Ricky's number in her phone. Why does she have his number? Also, behind his desk was a picture or a painting of a bluebell field, and if you remember, Claire's been sent a letter of a pressed bluebell. Was it him that sent that letter? Who knows, but it's not really looking very good for him. Back in Broadchurch, whilst Alec and Ellie were away in Sandbrook, Alec had warned Claire to stay away from Lee, but that lasted all of about 5 minutes. All he had to do was deliver her favourite takeaway to her house, and she was letting him in for sexy times. Things aren't completely going Lee's way though, because Ollie, the journalist, has put 2 and 2 together and worked out who Lee is, and he runs a front page story saying the guy accused of the Sandbrook murder is in Broadchurch, and you see Claire, Lee and Ricky all reading this paper at the same time, so Ricky now knows where Lee is, and it's probably quite likely that he's going to come to Broadchurch for a bit of a confrontation. So on the whole Joe Miller trial side of things, before we get into the court case, just a bit about how people are doing outside of court. Mark and Beth seem to be in a much better place. Beth's talking about setting up a charity in Danny's name. Mark seems like a completely changed man since the birth of the new baby, and we see him kind of break up that little arrangement with Tom. Obviously he's kind of come to his senses now and realises that it's a really terrible idea. Tom doesn't take it very well though, and is quite upset, and you see him later playing computer games in the caravan on his own, but he's then interrupted by the arrival of Susan Wright from the first series. She's back in town. She's here to try and reconcile with her son Nige. She tells him that she's got cancer and she's dying, but doesn't really get the reaction she was hoping for. Nige doesn't believe her and thinks she's making it up. He's definitely not up for any sort of reconciliation. You might regret that though, given what happens later on in the episode. So onto court, and we see Lucy, Ellie's sister, take the stand, and despite Ellie's advice, she testifies that she saw Joe putting something in the bin on the night of the murder, and she's kind of really pleased with herself that she's like said this in court, but really she's kind of making things a lot worse, because she's saying that she told the police it was definitely Joe and that they didn't take it any further. So really it's kind of making the prosecution side of things look really bad, because it looks like the police have been covering up evidence. So actually she's made things a lot worse, even though she's obviously just trying to help. Prosecution have a surprise witness. It's an ex-colleague of Joe's, and she tells a story about a time when Joe basically flipped out at some guy in a car park for taking a parking space and beats him up. So it kind of shows that, you know, he can have a complete change of character at a moment's notice, and that he does have this like violent temper inside him. You see the defence team struggle with whether or not to put Joe up on the stand, so they do like a little practice questioning with him, and he's terrible. He's like wide-eyed and nervous and gives really shaky answers, so they definitely do not want to put him up. Luckily they have a wild card though in the form of Susan Wright, and she comes out and testifies that she saw a man lift a body from a boat and place it on the beach on the night of the murder, and she says that man was Nige. So I don't know if she genuinely thinks it was Nige. We saw this mentioned in the first series, but it looked like she'd kind of accepted that it wasn't him. Either that or this is payback for him not wanting to reconcile with her. Either way, it's kind of putting Nige really firmly in the frame there. Jocelyn is really thrown by this twist in the court. You can see like her eyes go blurry. She just looks really, really tired. And again, I mentioned it in the last episode, but I don't know if this is just the court case and the whole money worries that she's got all kind of building up, or if there's like an illness or something there behind it, but there's definitely something not right with her. So that twist in court was the end of the episode. So I'm now going to talk about my questions I have. The first one is Claire and Alec. Did they just sleep together once? Was there an affair? Was this like after the court case fell apart? Was it before? Hopefully we'll find answers to those questions. Also, Claire and Ricky, very similar. Were they having an affair? Why she got his number? Are they involved in some way with the whole murder? Did he send her that letter? So many questions. Definitely something not right with Claire though, because you see that she lies to Lee. Like when he was round earlier, he asked her if she'd slept with anyone else since they split up, and she says no, but we know that she slept with someone like the previous week, that guy she met in the club. So is that just a case of her lying to like save her husband getting upset, or, you know, is this just like another lie on top of all the lies that she's already telling? Another question is about just the whole Jocelyn and Sharon thing that we've talked about before. So there's obviously some kind of stuff that's happened in the past with them. We didn't really get any further forward with that this episode. We didn't hear any more about like Sharon's son in prison or anything like that, but I'm sure we'll find out more soon. On the prediction side of things, with the Joe Miller trial, I'm kind of leaning more towards now thinking that he might be found not guilty. The reason being that there's just been so many scenes where we've got like Beth talking to someone and being like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to win this, aren't we? And it just makes me think, are you gonna win this? If he is found not guilty, I think there'll be something that happens afterwards, because like in the last series, it was kind of a bit of a surprise that they revealed who the killer was like halfway through the last episode, and then we had a bit of an aftermath. And I think that'll be very similar in this series. I think the verdict will not be the end of the last episode. I think there'll be stuff that comes after that. So it might be that he's found not guilty, but then something else happens after it. But yeah, I mean, I think they can't kind of let him get away with it, surely. But I don't think it's going to be a clear-cut, like, he's found guilty thing. I think there's going to be something else there. So you know the defence side are putting together an alternative killer, and we see Abby and Sharon talking about this. Interestingly, Abby thinks that Joe did do it. Yeah, there's quite a funny bit where Sharon says like, oh, I think it's obvious like who they're putting up as the alternative killer, and then the next scene is like Mark pushing the buggy. So yeah, I mean it is quite obvious. They're going to be pinning it on Mark. I think they'll also be trying to make it look like Nige was involved, given what Susan said in court. And I also think that the Tom thing, like the Mark and Tom meeting up thing, is going to get revealed at some point. That's going to harm like Mark's case in court. On the Sandbrook side of things, last week I said that I suspected that Ricky, the dad, was going to be the killer. Now I'm not so sure, just because of the fact that that was episode 4, which is halfway through the series, and it was basically, the whole episode was really about pinning it on Ricky, and I just think it's too early for that to have been revealed if that is the actual outcome. So I'm now kind of leaning more towards either it's maybe him but with involvement from Claire and possibly also Lee, or maybe the other dad, because we've not really focused on him yet. But yeah, I'm now not so sure that it is definitely a Ricky did it thing. So that is my summary of episode 4 and just my thoughts on what I think is going to happen next. As always, leave me your comments below if you've got any thoughts on the episode or where you think the series is going to go next. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed so you can see my next video, and I will see you next week. Bye!